to the Creative Constitution podcast. I'm again joined by Mr. Steve Davidson, and today we are going to be talking about color.
Color.
Ooh, my favorite.
Awesome.
Nobody likes gray stuff.
Exactly.
When you get those raws and they don't look so fresh, and then you're like, oh man, did we make a crappy movie?
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's because you need to add color.
Hold up. Be patient. It's coming.
It's coming.
Don't you know this process, director?
Exactly. Come on, filmmakers.
Yes.
You should know this already.
So even sometimes when you're working with a client, I would probably not show them
the gray
raws.
version, the raws.
Yeah. And when people even ask for the raws, it's a bit like, oh.
To be honest, I feel like you should never really send the first draft of anything to a client.
Yeah.
It's like the first time I ever watched the draft version of a short film that I had acted in.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my
That's
God.
it.
I'm crap.
Yeah.
I'm so bad. But then time passes and they add music and add sounds,
Mm-hmm.
add color, and all of a sudden it's a completely different experience.
You're adding life into it when you bring that color. I love color grading. It's something I never thought about. When I first started filming, I didn't think about the color at all. I was more concentrating on the composition and movement and the content, the story. But a big thing I was forgetting was the color. Because that's everything. It sets the tone. When you start to look into color science and advertising and colors are there for a big reason. They affect us psychologically. So like a lot of color grading can be done to manipulate the viewer depending on the scene that you're doing. So, you'll find a lot of scary scenes and things. There's not much color. It's very blue. It's very cold. It's, you're creating that mood already. That mood will be there with the music and the sound effects and stuff, but the color is massive, a massive part of
Visual
that.
language is so important. And when you're making a movie, yes, the composition is important, but the color is sometimes more important because you can have a shot that doesn't look very good, but if the color's on point, you actually get the viewer to experience what you want them to feel.
Yeah.
So horrors do this very well. You could have a completely shaky camera, but then if it's really dark and suspenseful and you've got someone running through a house because they're trying to get away from something, it's not going to be really bright, is it? No. You're going to need to work with the colors and the coloration of your frame, and even to the point of the clothes that the actors are wearing.
Yeah.
The colors of the environment, the colors of the props. There's so many elements that form part of what color is in film. Yeah,
for sure. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scene just to create that look.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely like freelancing and a bit of run and gun stuff. I've saved a lot of shots with color grading.
Right, so tell me a little bit about that. So give me a couple stories.
So I don't know, I shot a wedding a couple weeks ago, and the in camera it was nice. It looked good.
Was it a cloudy day or something? What was the color already just naturally?
No, it was a nice day. I had an ND filter on as well, so I'm not blowing out my highlights and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I don't worry too much about because with the Blackmagic RAW, which inside of DaVinci, it can use that.
Right, so it's just built in to have better color profiles already.
Yeah, and you can rescue your highlights as well. It does a little bit of, I guess it would be an AI type feature.
Cool.
Where it just brings those highlights back. So if they looked super cooked, it's at least not as bad.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
Obviously, film right from the beginning is going to save you a lot of work later, but it's definitely fixable to an extent.
And you don't want to have your exposure way too high or way too low.
No.
But I've always heard that exposure higher is better than exposure too low. Yeah. Is that true?
I would say so, yeah, because it's really hard to bring those darks back up to match the light, because you know you'll be pulling your highlights down and raising your shadows to kind of still keep a contrast, but at least so you can see what's
brings
going
up too
on in
much
the shadows.
noise if you try and
But
really
then they're noisy.
lighten up.
They're not black anymore. They're like a kind of gunky. I don't know. It doesn't look great. Unless you have the eye for it, you're probably not going to tell. So like unless you're doing like something super cinematic, or you know it's a sort of high budget ad or whatever, most people aren't going to know. Like your clients hired you because they don't know shit.
So with the wedding,
but yes,
so what happened there?
So like there was, and because I one of my mates, he was helping me out. He shoots on a Sony, so like his stuff was, you know, the color profile is a little bit different to the Blackmagic one, and some of his stuff he was very worried was way blown out, or you know, it was unusable. But yeah, color grading can save a lot of stuff, and so like just as the bride was coming down, you know, he was still tweaking with some settings and things.
Oh no!
And you know, he just kind of left it as is. Better to film and get something than nothing. And he was a bit afraid that it was way too blown out. But you know, grading, you can save that. So it's like, don't worry, bro, I got you.
Wow, so there's actually a lot you can do in post. So if you are on set and you're like, oh no,
you're stressing,
that scene that we could only do once the settings were off, you can probably do quite a bit of work in post.
Yeah, if it's raw.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
So I would always shoot in raw. Like that's just, the file size is bigger, but that's gonna save your ass.
True. So let's talk about, you mentioned it a little bit, but we've got obviously the color wheel and how colors work together, and you've obviously got complementary colors, and you can find so much information about that. I mean, there's a reason why McDonald's is yellow. There's a reason why, you know, chocolate is purple. You know, there's so many emotions that come with the color that brands select, that filmmakers use. Yeah. I mean, some of the most symbolic, you know, scenes or the important scenes that come to mind, they usually have like a very out there color, you know, in a sea of contrast. Exactly. So in a sea of all black characters, like dressed in all black and kind of no features, and all of a sudden you see a woman in yellow with an umbrella, you know, it's like, there's just you build contrast and it builds interest in that scene.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you go about kind of selecting what coloration to give your scenes? Like, for example, how the Joker will have a palette of colors. I mean, they could have gone with other colors. So like, what's your thinking when you're filming something?
So a lot of this should be decided early, saving a lot of time, but usually it's up to the client. So for me, if they have no idea what they're doing, I'll probably do a couple grades. I'll do just a Rec 709, so that's kind of what the camera will see. Then I'll do like sort of a basic grade. Then I might, you know, and DaVinci Resolve's awesome for this because you can go to your color tab, create one look, duplicate it, create another look, and switch between them super quickly.
Right, so then you can give the client a sample of both very, very quickly.
Yeah, so of that one frame, you could have 5 or 6 different examples. What do you like? You know, do you like any of them? Is some of them, you know, and then you can start to get a look very early.
When you talk to a client and you first get a brief, whether that is an ad or film or whatever the case may be, do you often get an idea of what sort of color they're looking for in the first place? Usually. Or is that something that's usually like kind of left up to you and then you've got to give them some form of idea?
A little bit of both. Like, in general, I'll look at the brand or whatever they've done prior.
Yeah,
and
so
see
look
what
at the
kind
precedent.
See what they're going for, what their market is, and that usually, you know, I'll quickly be able to get an idea from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a lot of stuff I've worked with, it hasn't been like ultra creative, you know, grades and things like that. But like for me, like I do a nice base grade and I'll make my subject pop and, you know, throw in a little
Sparkle.
sprinkle here and there of color, or of, you know, even just softening those highlights with a, you know, a slight blur. You know, you can a little blur thrown over the whole grade, and it's, you know,
just kind of softens
it's only like
everything.
0.1% on, but it just softens those highlights. It kind of gives a, you know, the old like Vaseline over the lens trick. Like it's that in post essentially.
That's cool. So when you're doing your color grade, let's just say you've got all your raw clips, they've been organized. Do you have a certain process that you like to repeat when you're working with footage?
I did a really good color grading course by 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒. He lives in LA and is just a color gradist. And his whole thing is teaching people to freelance color grade and stop, you know, just getting paid nothing, essentially.
Wow.
Like being able to have your work good enough to approach big brands comfortably and with confidence. And he saves a lot of short films, feature films. Like people are like, we'll need a reshoot, this is going to cost hundreds, thousands of dollars, and they come to him, what can you do with it? I got you, bro. Like
that's really good.
Yeah,
that's
so
really good.
If you really know what you're doing, you can definitely save a lot of footage, save a lot of time.
And it's really a one-time investment, and you'll have that knowledge forever. And does he mainly use DaVinci Resolve?
DaVinci Resolve is his thing. He's got the full color wheels, like
that's cool.
proper good setup, which I'd love to get eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just a color gradist. He doesn't edit. He just gets given footage and just does that. So that'd be a dream.
That's so good.
I've had a few color grading jobs on different short films and things, using reds. But yeah, a good thing with the course, he teaches you grading Red, Sony, Blackmagic, Canon.
Because each camera is completely different, isn't it?
Yeah. So all different cameras have different color profiles, which sort of changes the look a little bit. But if you know the profile, then you're able to get the look that you want out of it anyway. So yeah.
I've had some of my own experiences with coloring gone wrong, and mainly because the footage just was not high quality enough.
Yeah.
So for example, my first short film, we ended up losing a lot of the high quality footage. It's just over the months of kind of editing and just like working with different people, just kind of sometimes shit happens and you end up losing footage and stuff. So the version that I had was really low quality.
Yeah.
And we had filmed a lot of our night scenes with very low lighting in the first place. So then as a result, our files almost had like no information left in them.
Yeah.
So then when I went to a color grading person, they just really struggled to bring up any sort of light in those really, really dark frames, those really dark shots. And then as a result, we kind of ended up with something really noisy. And even though sometimes that can be okay, like you can kind of get away with it, because a lot of viewers don't really care. Like we did some test screenings and actually no one said anything about noise. But then when we had it in like a version where there was low noise and it was just really dark, that's when people noticed, because they were like, oh, I can't see anything. Yeah. But what's interesting, the reason why I bring this up as well, is because I found out that they filmed the Tom Hanks movie, Castaway, in complete light. Like they actually filmed all of it during the day, and most of it was actually in post darkened to make it look like night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I should do that for my own short films.
Yeah, so that's a good trick is you film in daylight, or probably when the sun is where the moon would be at its peak.
Right.
And then you're just gonna pull those darks down, probably get the lights down as well, and then slap a blue grade over the top, and it's
Jeez.
night.
Gosh, that's amazing. I
Yeah.
feel like I should almost never film at night again because
Yeah.
I mean, my genre is usually like thriller / horror,
Mm.
and that often leads you to the forest, you know, to film scenes in a forest or in a cabin or something like that.
Yeah.
And at night, everything comes to life. Like, you've got a billion bugs, you've got
Yeah.
mosquitoes, you've got spiders. Like, I don't want to touch any of them.
Yeah.
So then it would be so much handier if I just went to the forest during the day. Hopefully there's no, like, schools nearby, or like big revving cars, and if you can actually make it look like night, how good's that?
Yeah, exactly.
And do audiences notice?
Not the average person. I can see it. I'm like, they shot in day.
Well, what makes you? What kind of like makes you say that? What you look at the shot and you're like, okay, they shot that during the day, but what makes you say that?
It's usually like the highlights are quite harsh for what night would actually be.
So the moon would be just a lot softer.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe the way to get away with that is to use a massive like softbox or like some form of diffuser.
Yeah, but then like normally you'll shoot when it's cloudy, you know, natural diffusion, and can kind of get away with it. But like if that sun pops out But the good thing with grading though is you can always sort of work off your worst clip and then match your better clips to that worst clip. So like whatever you can push that, you know, that worst one to, you'll just bring the other ones down to and just create like a consistent look rather than, you know, one looking a bit brighter than the other. Like that just throws people off and
Right.
it kind of removes you from the experience.
Yeah, you don't want to do anything that removes the viewer from the viewing experience.
Yeah, so even just, you know, having an inconsistent look can very well do that. So
Right.
yeah, that's another thing with color grading is just creating a consistent look.
And is that across the whole film or just like the one
The
scene?
whole film.
The whole film.
Yeah.
And how do you usually do that? Do you have an adjustment layer for the whole film that you like to kind of do your final tweaking on? Almost like adding a red glow on everything. Like, is that how you go about it?
So because color grading's node based, you can copy that node tree over to a new clip. If it's the same color profile, like if you're working with red all the way through, you'll be able to, should be able to, depends if the light fluctuates or whatever, copy that across, almost like Lightroom, you know, when you just duplicate that look, bring it across, boom, 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 boom. But then you might need to make minor tweaks here and there just to get them looking consistent. But then if you're working with red footage, probably some ProRes, you know, a couple other different ones, you're gonna have to adapt them and, you know, get them consistent.
It's quite the process, isn't it?
Yeah.
I definitely, the more I work in film, the more I see every part of the process, the more complicated everything really is. There's an art to everything.
Yeah.
There's an art to sound editing, there's an art to music, there's an art to art department.
Yeah.
And literally everything.
The set dressing, you know.
Yeah, what the costumes look like. I mean, even that has big symbolic meaning. And color has a huge play in that as well.
Yeah.
Like if your character is wearing black clothing versus very bright yellow, that's going to be a completely different, almost symbolic meaning to what the viewer sees and understands.
Yeah.
You know, that yellow outfit might be, they're in a really great mood. You know, they're happy. Whereas a dark one might be, they're in a depression or they're not really at their peak of happiness.
Yeah.
Or they might be up to no good. There's so much you can do with color.
Yeah.
And what are some of your favorite movies when it comes to kind of color and the ones that kind of come to mind?
I think the Joker, which you mentioned in our other episode.
Yeah.
For sure. Like what a, you know, like,
very, very strong greens and blues and things, which kind of makes sense because the Joker is meant to be a character that has so many ebbs and flows to his personality and his mood.
Yeah.
I mean, what an interesting character. So it makes sense. Their color palettes were really, really cool.
Yeah, Blade Runner had such an amazing...
Blade Runner's so cool.
Just like very...
Very striking.
Yeah, it was just... Every shot was a mood, you know?
Yeah.
And they created a lot of that just through their lighting as well.
Oh, one of my favorites is Kill Bill.
Kill
I
Bill.
love it.
Yeah.
Gosh, the reds in that.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Kill Bill's my favorite movie. And the whole color composition, Quentin Tarantino has absolutely nailed it. I mean, from like the blood slashing bright reds to the white snow with the reds, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, when you watch a movie and you're just like, wow, this is just beautiful.
Yeah.
That's often because of the color.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have really nice bright trees with a beautiful landscape, and then the characters will flow through and they're wearing like really nice white outfits. You know, their film is beautiful, and I think using color just brings everything up.
Yeah.
Just enhances everything.
Yeah. I love especially when a director will play with just the primary colors, red, yellow, blue, and they'll just keep in all the different scenes. It's always there. It's subtle, but it's always there. And that's probably a big thing with color. Like if you're starting to color grade, be subtle. Don't be cranking your saturations and things. It's just little.
I do love saturation. You put it to like friggin' halfway and you're like, whoa, these greens look like you're on mushrooms.
Yeah.
So it's just wild what you can do with it. But then you go too far and then all of a sudden you don't even look human anymore.
Yeah. Mad Max. Fury Road.
Max.
Like,
well, that's similar color to Blade Runner.
Yeah. And I think I like just really strong colors, but you can get away with it because it's your look.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, like if that look wasn't consistent, it would feel wrong. But because from the very opening scene, it's boom, intense, and they've chosen that and they're sticking with it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So when you're doing your filmmaking, you're on set, or, you know, you've got a gig, you're on like a commercial set, or you're going to a real estate, whatever.
Yeah.
Is color something that is already in your mind from the moment that you turn on your camera and you get your framing?
Yeah. It's not like the most important thing, but it's definitely something that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And then does that kind of drive what you do with kind of the whole filmmaking process as you kind of are there mainly doing the footage part of it?
Yeah.
So then you might go, oh, that lamp looks really nice there. Let's get that involved, because that's going to give us like a nice glow that I won't be able to replicate in post.
Yeah, definitely. Like that environment. Yeah, you'll start to see things that will, make it interesting. And then you know that I'm gonna crank that in there.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you start to notice things like, I don't know, if I've been shooting at a festival or something like that, you know, you can blend, you know, say someone's sending it a little bit too much and they might not want that in their after movie. You can dial them out of there.
Yeah, that's true.
And shooting with 4K, 6K, like you can crop in.
Right,
You're
the
not
composition
gonna
can be like different in the end.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very handy.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, you can get away with a bit.
What's your favorite color to like add into frames or use in your films and your projects?
I've always been a fan of yellow, almost this yellow.
Yeah?
Especially
like very mustard yellow?
Yeah, like especially, you know, those old films with the subtitles that are like yellow. Yeah. Like I've always liked that style, but I think yellow's a kind of underrated color to use. But I love like green. Green would be my favorite color for sure.
So you love your nature shots?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite, but, you know, all colors are beautiful.
All colors are beautiful indeed.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that you can use color in film. I mean, color really adds definition. It enhances what you have in your frame. So it's always important to just have a look around and use colors that strike to you, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're setting up a shot and you see a really cool plant that you can add in your interview, that's a great amount of color to just throw in there. Exactly. Color is so important for film. I mean, there's so many ways that you can use it. It enhances your shots. It just makes things just so much more beautiful. And we've heard from Steve, who's an amazing colorist. And we hope that you've learned something new in this podcast. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye. Make it pop.
Make it pop, 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 pop.
Pop, pop.